Hey, good morning. It's Mike Bowen, and it's the 1st of July, and the Rules Embassy is now open for business. So, if you've watched any of the World Triathlon events in the last couple of weeks, you probably marvel at maybe the speed by which some of these elite athletes go through transition, and the difference that a good transition or a poor transition can make to a race outcome, I'm sure. So, I don't think there's anybody who hasn't done enough triathlons who would say that the transition areas are crucial for a good race. There have been some books out calling transition the fourth discipline of triathlon. So, I want to talk this morning about some important guidelines and some things to keep in mind as you go into a transition area at a USA Triathlon event, especially in light of the new rule set. So first off, make sure that you know the layout of the transition. This has not changed all that much from back pre-World Triathlon rule set. So make sure you're familiar with the transition area, know the flow and arrangement. How do you come in from the swim and go out to the bike, and then come in from the bike and go out to the run, and figure out all that flow in relation to your assigned spot. If you have assigned racking, small space racking, or if you have group racking, depending upon the race director's whim. And we'll talk a little bit about that further on, okay? So once you get into the rack area where your bike and your gear goes, and this is especially important, regardless of what sort of racking scheme you are, whether it's a single assigned rack area, or if you're in a group racking where you're allowed to rack within anywhere within a certain number range. Make sure that you respect the boundaries of your fellow athletes. Everybody has pretty much the same amount of space within the transition area, even with the group racking. So make sure you set up your gear, with as minimal space as possible, and avoid encroaching on space that can be used for neighboring athletes. This makes it all the more important to arrive early to the transition area on the morning of the race. If you get there well in advance of the race start time, the odds are better, especially in one of those range rackings where you can get that edge of the rack if you so desire it, or you have enough space to work yourself in. So later on, and I've talked about this multiple years in the past, I find that there is a direct correlation between how late an athlete shows up to the transition area before the race starts, and the odds of them receiving a penalty for having their gear misracked. All right. Lay out your gear in a nice organized manner. I've always said less is more when it comes to triathlon gear. Depending upon the federation, USAT has started to move toward, asking people to bring strictly the gear that they will use for the race, and all the extra sundry stuff like coolers and bags and stools and whatever have you, asking them to keep those outside of the transition area. Less is more, okay? Make sure that you arrange your items in an order that will allow you to spend the least amount of time in transition as possible, such as the swim to bike and bike to run transition, okay? Follow the specific rules that are outlined both in the USAT rule set and provided by the race organizers regarding gear placement. I've had people ask in the past, why do I have to set my bike up so that the saddle hang by the saddle with the front of the bike facing out? And there's a really good reason for that. I would take a few seconds to talk about that. That allows the race organizers to tell throughout the race who's not gone onto the bike course. and who's returned from the bike course, because once you get in from the bike to go to the run, more often than not, the person will hang that bike up on the rack front wheel first. So if they see a bunch of bikes that are front wheel first, and then there's one that's sitting out with its front wheel into the transition area, the odds are that they have not come out of the swim, or they got pulled from the race during the swim, and then they can check and say, is that person okay? Have we accounted for them? All right. But make sure that you follow the specific rules regarding gear placement. Also, prohibited items. Glass is a big one right there. You bring glass into a transition area, you're going to get disqualified from the race. Also, transition area athletes only are allowed in transition areas. This has not changed, all right? And any other sort of recommendations or regulations that the race director has. If they say that you can have your bags within transition, or a specific area of transition, or up against the fence line, figure that one out early on, so that there is less chance for you to get a warn and amend penalty before the race, or a yellow card penalty during the race, which can hold you there for anywhere from 15 seconds up to a minute, depending upon the duration of the race itself. All right. Be mindful of your fellow athletes. I cannot stress this enough, especially as the races get larger and you start getting around a lot of people. There's less space, relatively speaking, for everybody to do exactly what they want. So it helps immensely when athletes work and play well together. In many cases, I've had to ask athletes to adjust their racking in order to allow another athlete into the area, and athletes have been tempted to reach and move people's other athletes' gear, and I've had to stop them and say, you can't do that. I can get a volunteer to do that, or we can get the other athlete, but you guys need to play well with each other. All right. Practice your transitions. Practicing going from the swim to the bike to the run during training sessions will help you immensely during the day, and especially on the morning of the race. If you rehearse that flow in from the swim exit to where your gear is, and then out onto the bike, and then from the bike coming back in and going to the run, that will help in many ways. How many people I've run into that have had difficulty finding their specific area in transition, and they want to put a marker up in the transition area. They want to put chalk out, or they want to put flour out or something like that onto the ground. Markings and objects to easily identify a spot in transition is forbidden under the USAT rules, and World Triathlon for that matter. And we can remove those without telling the athlete. We don't have to give you a warning saying, hey, we took your stuff down. In the case of an age group non-drafting race, you can have a towel or a mat in transition, down in that space where your gear is. Just set it up underneath where your wheel is facing into the transition area. If you get yourself a towel or a mat that's very distinctive, that'll help you to remember where exactly you are in transition when you come back from the swim or bike segment. Okay. Transition can be hectic. Everybody's moving around all over the place. Just stay focused, be calm, don't get flustered. If you receive a penalty for a transition violation, which can either be warn and amend, when we say, hey, stop, you're starting to do something that's going to get you in bigger trouble. Let's fix this problem. Or if you get a yellow card, and that's a time penalty, that's a perfectly good time for you to just kind of take your breath, get your wits about you, and straighten things out. If you got a yellow card, you can't do anything. Can't mess with your gear. Can't move around your bike. Can't play with your bike helmet or your swim cap or whatever it is that's going on. You just got to stand there for 10, 15 seconds. All right. Think of it as the official's way of allowing you to relax and regain your focus, even for a brief period of time. Okay. Remember to review the USAT Multisport rule set. Take time to attend a rules briefing if the event has one, or if they do a remote one or a virtual one. Make sure that you watch it. And if you have any questions about transition area conduct or race conduct for that matter, see the head official, talk to them, talk to the race director. If it's a layout or a race related issue, if it's a rules related issue, come see the head officials. Okay, that's why we're there. They can answer those questions and make sure that you don't get any major confusion going on. Okay. So by practicing transitions and familiarizing yourself with the layout of the transition beforehand, you can get a better, smoother race experience. All right. This is a little long and a little wordy. Take the time, if you have not read the USAT Multisport rule set, to go to the USA Triathlon website and search Multisport rules, and it should bring it up within the site. If you have any questions, please feel free to send me an email, michael.s.bowen@gmail.com, or you can reach out to me at www.facebook.com/USAT Rules Guide. Have yourself a nice weekend.